Hey everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm excited because we're almost at the end of this book. Not that I'm ready to be over the book, but it's taken forever for me to get all the videos out here on the book. And I'm ready to move on to something else. I've got a few other ideas to what I want to move on to. But I do want to finish this. I've made some little irrelevant micro videos in between these videos about my guinea pig, about my journey, which I've not fully updated everybody on my journey and what's happened and where we are right now. But I might do that, I might not. I don't know. Anyhow, this is what we're reading today. Ray Comfort's Scientific Facts in the Bible. We are on part 13, I think, chapter 12. Excuse me, Evolution and the Bible. Let's get started. If you have read through this book with an open mind, you may be wondering how the theory of evolution is compatible with the Bible. The answer is that it is not. They are diametrically opposed to one another. If evolution is true, then the Bible is false. This is because the Bible says that every animal brings forth after its own kind, while evolution says quite the opposite. The Bible says that there is one kind of flesh of beast and another kind of flesh of man. In other words, man is not just another animal in the evolutionary chain. We've got different stuff, different makeup. I do believe in microevolution, variations within species, different types of dogs and different breeds of dogs, cats, whatever. But there is no scientific evidence for macroevolution, one species evolving into another species. The belief that man evolved from primates is based on macroevolution, commonly known as the theory of evolution. We are continually told that evolution is scientific and that it is a proven fact and that the Bible is merely a collection of myths. Not true. However strange though it may sound, it is evolution that is a collection of myths in the Bible that is proven fact. Do you find that hard to believe? Then stay with me. Philosophy professor convinced. In reference to creation, Derek Prince said, I am simple-minded enough to believe that it happened the way the Bible described it. I have been a professor at Britain's largest university, Cambridge, for 9 years. I hold various degrees and academic distinctions, and I feel in many ways I am quite sophisticated intellectually, but I don't feel in any way intellectual inferior, or when I say that I believe the Bible's records of creation. Prior to believing the Bible, I have studied many other attempts to explain man's origin and found them all unsatisfying and in many cases self-contradictory. I turned to study the Bible as a professional philosopher, not as a believer, and I commented to myself, at least it can't be any sillier than some of the other things I've heard, and to my astonishment I discovered it had the answers. All right. Evolution, fact or fiction. Evolution, on the other hand, seems to supply more questions than answers. If every creature evolved with no creator, there are numerous problems for scientific evolution. Take, for instance, the first bird. Did the bird breathe? Did it breathe before it evolved lungs? How did it do this? Why did it evolve lungs if it was happily surviving without them? How did it know what it needed? How did it know what it needed to be evolved if its brain hadn't evolved yet? Did the bird have a mouth? Did it eat before it had evolved a mouth? Where did the mouth send the food before the stomach evolved? How did the bird have energy if it didn't eat? Because it didn't yet have a mouth. How did the bird see what there was to eat before its eyes evolved? Evolution is intellectual suicide. It is an embarrassment. Professor Louis Baunour, Director of Research, National Center of Scientific Research, so rightly stated, evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. This theory has helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless. Michael Rouse, in his book Darwin's Theory, An Exercise in Science, says, an increasing number of scientists, most particularly a growing number of evolutionists argue that Darwinian evolutionary theory is no genuine scientific theory at all. Many of the critics have the highest intellectual credentials. Dr. T.N. Tamisan, Tamisan of the Atomic Energy Commission said scientists who go about teaching that evolution is fact of life are great conmen, and the story that they are telling may be the greatest hoax ever. Malcolm Muggeridge, the British journalist and the philosopher, said, I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it has been applied, will be one of the greatest jokes in the history books of the future. Posterity will marvel that so flimsy and dubious an hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity, I can't even say that word, credulity, credulity, that it has. The evolution of the theory. Let's look at how the theory has evolved through the years. Charles Darwin, a British lawyer, an amateur... Did I read this already? No. Alright, Charles Darwin, a British lawyer and an amateur geologist, announced in 1912 his discovery of pieces of a human skull. I did read this. No, I didn't. Sorry. Alright. Announced in 1912 his discovery of pieces of a human skull and an ape-like jaw in a gravel pit near the town of Piltdown, England. Dawson's announcement stopped the scorn cold. Experts insistently declared Piltdown Man estimated to be 300,000 to 1 million years old. The evolutionary find of the century. Darwin's missing link had been identified, or so it seemed, for the next 40 or so years. Then, in the early 50s, scientists began to suspect misattribution. In 1953, that suspicion gave way to a full-blown scandal. Piltdown Man was a hoax. Radiocarbon tests proved that its skull belonged to a 600-year-old woman and its jaw to a 500-year-old orangutan from the East Indies. Our Times, the illustrated story of the 20th century. The Piltdown Man fraud wasn't an isolated incident. The famed Nebraska Man was derived from a single tooth, which was later found to be from an extinct pig. Java Man, found in the early 20th century, was nothing more than a piece of skull, a fragment of a thigh bone, and 3 molar teeth. The rest came from a deeply fertile imagination of plaster of Paris workers. Java Man is now regarded as fully human. Heidelberg Man came from a jawbone, a large chin section, and a few teeth. Most scientists reject the jawbone because it's similar to that of the modern man. Still, many evolutionists believe that he is 250,000 years old. No doubt they pinpointed his birthday with a carbon dating. However, Time magazine, June 11th, 1990, published a science article subtitled, Geologists Show That Carbon Dating Can Be Way Off. And don't look to Neanderthal Man for any evidence of evolution. He died of exposure. His skull was exposed as being fully human, not ape. Not only was his stooped posture found to be caused by disease, but he spoke and was artistic and religious. Dr. Colin Patterson, senior paleontologist at the British Museum of Natural History, gave a keynote address at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City in 1981. In it, he explained his sudden anti-evolutionary view. One morning, I woke up, and it struck me that that I had been working on this stuff for 20 years and there was not one thing I knew about it. That's quite a shock to learn, that one can be so misled so long. I tried putting a simple question to various people. Can you tell me anything you know about evolution? Any one thing that is true. I tried that question on geology staff at the Field Museum of Natural History, and the only answer I got was silence. I tried it on the members of the evolutionary morphology seminar in the University of Chicago, a very prestigious body of evolutionists, and all I got there was silence for a long time. And eventually one person said, I do know one thing. It ought not to be taught in high school. The religion of evolution. If there is no evidence for evolution, why is the theory promoted so vehemently? Sir Arthur Keith, who wrote the foreword to The Origin of Species, 100th edition, admitted, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it only because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. H.S. Lipton, professor of physics, University of Manchester, UK, said, in fact, evolution became, in a sense, a scientific religion. Almost all scientists have accepted it, and many are prepared to bend their observations to fit in with it. Professor Lipson is right. Evolution is a religion. Let's look at how people became believers. Someone shared his faith in evolution with an unbeliever, who in time came to believe in the theory. He didn't have to turn from sin. He merely had to give up his belief in biblical creation. We may marvel at the Mormons for their simplistic belief in Joseph Smith missing golden tablets, but the evolutionist is just as gullible. He believes without a shred of evidence. His beliefs aren't in missing gold tablets, but in the missing link. No one has the missing link, but the evolutionist is convinced that it is there, somewhere, even after all these years. Rejection of the Bible's account of creation, as given in the book of Genesis, could rightly be called genocide, because it eradicates man's purpose of existence and left a whole generation with no certainty as to its beginning. Consequently, theories and tales of our origin have crept like primeval slime from the minds of those who don't know God. This intellectual genocide has given the godless a temporary license to labor to the extremes of their imaginations, giving birth to painful conjecture of human beings. They speak in speculation, the uncertain language of those who drift aimlessly across the endless seas of secular philosophy. The scriptures, on the other hand, delay only with truth and certainty. They talk of fact, reality, and purpose for man's existence. The darkness of the raging sea of futility retreats where the lighthouse of Genesis begins. Never-changing Bible, ever-changing science. According to an NBC News report in August 1999, there was a remarkable discovery in Australia. The Journal of Science reported that they had found what they considered to be proof that life appeared on Earth 2.7 billion years ago, a billion years earlier than previously thought. They now admit that they were wrong in their finds, and their first estimate was a mere let's see, I lost my place. And they now admit that they were wrong again, and their estimates were off. But with this discovery, they are now sure that they have the truth, until their next discovery. The CBS News reported in October 1999 that discoveries were made of the bones of an unknown animal in Asia that may be as much as 40 million years old. This changed scientific minds as to where man first originated. Scientists once believed that primates evolved in Africa, but now they think that they may be wrong, and that man's ancestors may have originated in Asia. So they believe until next discovery. USA Today, March 21, 2001, reported, paleontologists have discovered a new skeleton in the closet of a human ancestry that is likely to force scientists to revise, if not scrape, current theories of human origins. Reuters reported that this discovery left scientists of human evolution confused, saying, Lucy may not even be a direct human ancestor after all. Charles Spurgeon said, we are invited, brethren, most earnestly to go away from the old-fashioned beliefs of our forefathers because of the supposed discoveries of science. What is science? The method by which man tries to hide his ignorance. It should not be so, but so it is. You are not to be a dogmatical in theology, my brethren. It is wicked. But for scientific men, it is the correct thing. You are never to assert anything very strongly, but scientists may boldly assert what they cannot prove, and may demand a faith far more credulous than any we possess. Forsooth, you and I are to take our Bibles and shape and mold our belief according to the ever-shifting teaching of the so-called scientific man. What folly is this? Why the march of science, falsely so-called, through the world, may be traced by exploded fallacies and abandoned theories. Former explorers, once adored, are now ridiculed. The continual wreckings of false hypothesis is a matter of universal notoriety. You may tell where the supposed learned have encamped by the debris left behind of superstitions and theories as plentiful as the broken bottles. The Big Bang and Genesis. Try to think of an explosion that has produced order. Does a terrorist bomb create harmony? Big bangs cause chaos. How could a Big Bang produce a rose, apple trees, fish, sunsets, the seasons, hummingbirds, polar bears, thousands of birds and animals, each with its own eyes, nose, and mouth? Try this interesting experiment. Empty your garage of every piece of metal, wood, paint, rubber, and plastic. Make sure there is nothing there, nothing. And then wait for 10 years and see if a Mercedes evolves. Try it. If it doesn't appear, leave it for 20 years. Then if that doesn't work, try it for 100 years. Then try leaving it for 10,000 years. Admittedly, it is pretty hard to believe that it could appear. However, here's what will produce the necessary blind faith to make the evolutionary process believable. Leave it for 250 million years. Missing link, still missing. Did dinos soar? Imagination certainly took flight over Archaeoraptor liongenus, a bird-like fossil with a meat-eater's tail that was spurted out of the northeastern China, discovered at a Tucson, Arizona gem and mineral show last year, and displayed at the National Geographic Society in Washington, D.C. Many people saw the exhibit, which closed January 17th. Millions more read about the find in November's National Geographic. Now paleontologists are eating crow. Instead of a true missing link connecting dinosaurs to birds, the specimen appear to be a composite. Its unusual appendage likely tacked on by a Chinese farmer, not evolution. Archaeoraptor is hardly the first missing link to the snap under scrutiny. In 1912, fossil remains of an ancient hominid were found in England's Piltdown quarries and quickly dubbed man's ape-like ancestor. It took decades to reveal the hoax. U.S. News and World Report, February 14th, 2000. Darwin admitted that millions of missing links, transitional life forms, would have to be discovered in the fossil records to prove the accuracy of his theory that all species had gradually evolved by chance, mutations into new species. Unfortunately for his theory, despite hundreds of millions of spent on searching for fossils worldwide for more than a century, the scientists have failed to locate single missing links out of the millions that must exist if their theory of evolution is to be vindicated. From Grant R. Jeffrey, The Signature of God. There are gaps in fossil graveyard, places where there should be intermediate forms, but where there is nothing whatsoever instead. No paleontologist denies that this is so. It is simply a fact. Darwin's theory and the fossil record are in conflict. David Berlinski. Time magazine reported scientists concede that their most cherished theories are based on embarrassingly few fossil fragments and that huge gaps exist in the fossil records. November 7th, 1977, G.K. Chesterton rightly stated, the evolutionists seem to know everything about the missing link except for the fact that it is missing. Carbon dating in the fossil record. At least 6 different radiometric dating methods are available. The assumed age of the sample will dictate which dating method is used because each will give a different result. For example, when dinosaur bones containing carbon are found, they are not carbon dated because the result would be only a few thousand years. Because this would not match the assumed age based on the geologic column, scientists use another method of dating to give an age closer to the desired result. All radiometric results that do not match the pre-assigned ages of the geologic column are discarded. Dr. Kent Hovind. Shells from living snails were carbon dated as being 27,000 years old. Science Magazine, Volume 224, 1984. Ronald R. West, Ph.D., said, contrary to what most scientists write, the fossil record does not support the Darwinian theory of evolution because it is this theory. There are several which we use to interpret the fossil record. By doing so, we are guilty of circular reasoning if we then say the fossil record supports this theory. I'll be right back. Sorry, somebody was outside. Okay. Evolution and irreducible complexity. In his book Darwin's Black Box, biochemistry professor Michael J. Behe, an evolutionist, acknowledges a powerful challenge to Darwinian evolution. Some things he refers to as irreducible complexity. He gives a simple example: the humble mousetrap. The mousetrap has 5 major components that make it functional. If any one of these components is missing, it will not function. It becomes worthless as a mousetrap. Charles Darwin admitted, if it could be demonstrated that the complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break it down from the origins of species. If we just take the human eye, one small part of an incredibly complex creation, we will see this same principle of irreducible complexity. The eye cannot be reduced to anything less than what it is. It has thousands of co-equal functions to make it work. If we take away just one of those functions, the rest of the eye is worthless as an eye. How then did the eye evolve when all functions had to be present at once to give it any worth at all? To suppose that the eye, with all of its imitatable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. Charles Darwin, The Origins of Species. No wonder the focusing muscles in the eye move an estimated 100,000 times each day. The retina contains 137 million light-sensitive cells. Evolution in the Age of Man. The evolutionary scientists who believe that man existed for over 1 million years have an almost insurmountable problems. Using the assumption of 43 years for an average human generation, the population growth over 1 million years would produce 23,256 consecutive generations. We calculate the expected population by starting with one couple 1 million years ago and use the same assumptions of a 43-year generation and 2.5 children per family. The evolutionary theory of 1 million years of growth would produce trillion x trillion x trillion x trillion of people that should be alive today on our planet. To put this in perspective, this number is vastly greater than the total number of atoms in our vast universe. If mankind had lived on the earth for millions of years, we would all be standing on enormously high mountains of bones from trillions of skeletons of those who died in past generations. However, despite the tremendous archaeological and scientific investigation in the last 2 centuries, the scientists have not found a fraction of the trillion of skeletons predicted by the theory of evolutionary scientist Grant R. Jeffries, the signature of God. The Bible and blood. Platelets play an important role in preventing the loss of blood by beginning a chain reaction that results in blood clotting. As blood begins to flow from a cut or scratch, platelets respond to help the blood clot and to stop the bleeding after a short time. Platelets promote the clotting process by clumping together and forming a plug at the site of the wound and then releasing proteins called clotting factors. These proteins start a series of chemical reactions that are extremely complicated. Every step of the clotting must go smoothly if a clot is to form. If one of the clotting factors is missing or defective, the clotting process does not work. A series of genetic disorder known as hemophilia result from a defect in one of the clotting factor genes. Because they lack one of the clotting factors, hemophilia sufferers may bleed uncontrollably from even small cuts or scrapes. To form a blood clot, there must be 12 specific individual chemical reactions in our body. If evolution is true, and if this 12-step process didn't happen in the first generation, if any one of those specific reasons failed to operate in their exact reaction and order, no creature would have survived. They would have all had bled to death. Last page. Fossil evidence points to Genesis account. The creation account in Genesis and the theory of evolution could not be reconciled. One must be right and the other wrong. The story of the fossil agrees with the account of Genesis. In the oldest rocks, we did not find a series of fossils covering the gradual changes from the most primitive creatures to developed forms, but rather in the oldest rocks, developed species suddenly appeared. Between every species there was a complete absence of intermediate fossils. D.B. Grower, biochemist, scientist rejects evolution. Kenneth's Times. Based on all the evidence, Professor H.S. Lipson concludes, we must admit that the only acceptable explanation is creation. I know this is an anathema to physics, so indeed it is to me. But we must not reject the theory that we do not like. If the experimental evidence supports it. And we're done. On to the next chapter. Hope you guys enjoyed everything, and I will see you again later.